What's up everybody? Today we're back with another video in the Swift Beginner series, and today we're going to be talking about UI table views and how to build them. There's a table view in almost 100% of the apps. I mean, it's not 100%, but almost every single app has a table view in it. Throughout your iOS development career, you're going to build literally hundreds of these table views, so it's a good idea to learn the fundamentals and know them well. Since this is just a beginner video, we're going to build a pretty straightforward table view using some basic custom TableView cells. That'll give you a good foundation to build off when it comes time to build more elaborate table views. All right, let's get started. Okay, so here I am staring at a brand new Xcode project. The only thing you missed is me just doing, file new and naming my project. First, let me talk about the three big picture items we're going to need to bring this table view to life. First, we're going to need the basic UI for the table view. Then we're going to need some data for the table view, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then we're going to create a custom UITableView cell. First, let's start with the basic UI. The first thing I want to do real quick is this view controller that comes default. Let's go ahead and delete that. So delete. Move the trash. We don't want something called view controller. We want a more specific name for your project. So do Command N to get a new file. You can go ahead and make it a Cocoa Touch class. Hit next. I'm going to call mine video list screen because basically my table view is going to be a list of videos. If you're following along, you can name yours whatever you like, but that's what I'm going to name mine. So go ahead and hit next. Hit create. Okay, and then I always like to drag it up with the rest of my files. And then if you go to the storyboard, let's make sure our file and our view controller here are connected. So make sure you have your view controller selected by clicking on this yellow dot. And then here in the identity inspector, the thing that looks like an ID card, make sure you change your class to whatever you named it. Again, mine was video list screen. It should autocomplete to whatever you named it. Hit return. Okay, so now our file and our view are connected. I'm going to take a step back real quick and talk about navigation controllers. Now, 9 times out of 10, when you're implementing a table view, you're going to want to be able to tap on a cell and go to another screen. In order to get that functionality, you need to be embedded in a navigation controller. So I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. Now you can't see my toolbar at the top, but if you hit editor and then embed in navigation controller, and then Xcode puts it in a weird spot, but go ahead and drag this up so they're next to each other. And then now you have a navigation controller. Real quick, let me give you a high-level overview of what a navigation controller is doing. So picture the navigation controller as kind of like a container that holds a stack of screens, or views, we'll call them. As I'm sure you've seen in other apps, this top bar here usually has a back button and a title. That is your navigation controller. So picture your table view, and then when you tap on a cell, you go to a new screen. When you go to a new screen, picture that new screen being added to the top of the stack. And then when you hit back, that new screen gets thrown off the top of the stack, and you go back to your table view. Now in that example I just gave, there's only 2 screens, so it's pretty easy to picture how the stack is working. But you can imagine this could be 5, 6 screens deep, and that stack could be building. And I'm sure you've done it in apps where you have to hit back, to go cycle back through the screens. That's what you're doing. You're just throwing screens off the top of the stack until you get to the one you want to get to. So anyway, super high level overview of navigation controller, but that's what's going on. We're not actually going to deal with it in this tutorial, so I'm sorry if that confused you, but you are going to use navigation controllers with table views most of the time. So I did want to explain that real quick. Okay, let's build our basic table view UI. Make sure you have your video list screen selected or whatever you named it. And down here in the lower right, go ahead and type in table view. Now this table view controller at the top is a whole view controller specialized for table views. They're pretty limited in what they can do. There's certainly a time and a place to use these, but again, 9 times out of 10, you're just going to be using the table view and a table view cell. So go ahead and grab a table view, drag it onto your view controller. All right, now that the table view's on there, let's go ahead and add some constraints. Down here in the lower right, the TIE Fighter button here. Go ahead and get rid of this constraint to margin check mark. And let's go ahead and pin this to the view. This is the view controller's view, and make it 0 all around. So 0, 0. Again, make sure this one is the view, 0. And the way you can tell your constraints are placed is if these red lines are solid. So we got 4 solid red lines, and then you also have to hit this button. If you don't hit this button, they're not going to go into place. So hit add 4 constraints. And you see we're pinned to the whole screen. And the reason we want to pin to the view is so no matter what screen size we're on, this table view is going to take up the entire screen. Now, storyboard looks a little weird. Sometimes it doesn't catch up with what you're doing. So the way to fix this is to just kind of refresh the storyboard. So I always just click on a different file and then go back to storyboard real quick. As I'm sure you're well aware, Xcode has some finicky things to it. So the next thing we want to do is grab a table view cell, go and drag it into the table view, and now we have our cell. And this is going to be the custom cell we build that holds, in my case, our video list. So our basic table view is built. Now let's go ahead and start customizing our cell. If you click here on the view hierarchy on the left, click on table view, we can change the height of the cell that we want. So this is a pretty small cell for what we want because we're going to have an image of our video thumbnail and our title. So if you click here the size inspector, row height is 44. We're going to make ours actually 90. I like a lot of space, so they're going to be pretty big cells. Okay, down here in the bottom, like I said, we're going to add an image view because I want an image of my video thumbnail. So if you go ahead, type in image, and drag your image view into the cell. Make sure it goes into the cell. Now I know that my thumbnails are a 16:9 aspect ratio, and this is kind of where you have to know what you're building in order to tweak your cell to it. So I already know this ahead of time, so let's go ahead and adjust the size of my image. We'll do 160 by 90. Now 90 is the entire height of our cell. We do want some space. So if you hold Shift and drag in the corner, it'll keep the aspect ratio, and you can make it whatever size you want. So here I am just kind of tweaking the size to make sure it fits good in the cell. Again, this is just a tutorial, so I'm not going to go pixel perfect, but this should look okay. So here I have a width of 132 by 74. That keeps that 16:9 aspect ratio. Should be good to go. So now let's put some constraints on this. So imagine this cell is just its own little mini view, and we're just basically customizing this one little view, which is our cell. So we're going to add some constraints to this cell here, the image view, I mean. So now here what we want to do, we want to make sure it's 8 is kind of close. I don't know, I like a little more padding, so I'm going to go 12 pinned to the left. And I do want to keep the width constant, so go ahead and make that 132. And now there's kind of two ways you can do the width and the height, and I'll show you both, and you can kind of use which one works for your project. So you could just do width, height, and that's going to lock that in. For this project, that'll probably work fine because our cells are always going to be the same size, but sometimes your cells may dynamically change. So another way to do it is to set the width to 132, and then you can also set the aspect ratio. Again, ours, we know it's going to be 16:9. So what that's going to do, it's always going to be the width of 132, and it's going to change the height to make sure the aspect ratio is 16:9. So for now, we're only going to add 3 constraints. And a good rule of thumb for constraints is you should always have 4 per view. So right now we're missing one. And the one we're missing is we want to center it vertically in the cell. So it's right in the middle of the cell. So we're going to add these 3. And then we're going to come over to this alignment one just to the left of the TIE Fighter. Click on that. And then click on vertically in container. So that's going to center it vertically in the container. And you can see here aspect ratio numbers are weird, 66 by 37. We can just change that. And then down here in the multiplier, see it's 66 by 37. Down here there's presets, 1:1, 4:3, 16:9. We want it to be 16:9. So as you can see, it didn't adjust the image very much because I was super close to 16:9, but it wasn't a perfect 16:9. So okay, now that we have our image in place, let's go ahead and add our title. So down here in the lower right again, just pull up a label, drag that here, and let's go ahead and set some constraints for the label. Again, get rid of this constraint to margin. And I want this to be about 12 pixels spaced from the right of my image view. So that's why that's going to be a 12. And I want it to be pinned to the right of the view. But I do want a 12 margin here to the right of the view. So that's what that's going to be. And then I'm going to center it vertically. I can either center it vertically to the image view or to the container. Either one's going to work. I am going to give this one a height. So the height is going to be 21. It might even be a little more because I'm going to make the font bigger. So we'll just do 25. But again, you can kind of tweak this if you like. And our width, you notice we're not checking the width box because we're basically going to dynamically change the width based on how wide the screen is. So what these 2 constraints are doing is it's always going to be 12 points to the left of the image view, and it's always going to be 12 points to the right of the screen here. So even if you're on an iPad, it's going to stretch all the way to the right of the screen. So that's what we're doing here with this label. So go ahead and add these 3, and then you can see how our label stretched to the edge of the screen. And now it's only missing where it's supposed to be vertically in the container. So again, there's 2 ways to do it. We can center it vertically to our image view, or again, we can just come down here and do vertically center in container, and that'll accomplish the same thing. So we have all blue lines under constraints. We're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and change the font of my label. So make sure you have your label selected. Click the inspector here. I don't like super heavy blacks. Black's kind of weird. I always like to make it a dark gray. And then I always go, I don't know, one of my favorite fonts is Avenir Next. You can change it to whatever font you like. I like Avenir Next, Demi Bold. And 17 might be a little too big. We'll go to 16. Some of my titles are long. Which brings up a good point. There is a way to address long titles and labels. If you see here, auto shrink, fixed font size, that means it'll never auto shrink and you're just going to get the ... if it's too big. You can, however, do minimum font size. So 8's pretty small. We're just going to take this to 12. Or we'll do 14 actually. If the word is too big for the label, it's going to shrink the font all the way down to this minimum font size before it truncates it to the ... So 14 should work. It might not, but we'll find out when we actually run it. But this is a good thing to keep in mind because obviously an iPhone 7 Plus has much more width than an iPhone 5 or SE. Okay, we have the basic UI set for our TableView and TableView cell. Let's go ahead and create the file for our cell so we can do some coding in there. So again, do Command-N. Do a Cocoa Touch class, but this time make sure you change your subclass. We don't want it to be a UI view controller. We want it to be UITableView Cell. There we go. And then I'm just going to call this video cell. Hit next. And that works. And drag this up here. Usually now I would have folders. I would have a folder for screens, for cells, for model, all kinds of stuff. But this is going to be a small project. We'll just keep it there for now. So let's go ahead and build out our cell. So let's get rid of this boilerplate code, lines 13 to 22. Just go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to make some room here. I'm going to get rid of this right panel because we're going to open up the storyboard. Also hold Option and click on Video Cell, and that's going to pull these up next to each other. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drag some outlets. So we're going to drag the outlet from our TableView cell. Make sure you have the image view in the cell selected. A good way to verify that is here in the view hierarchy. So you can either drag from the view hierarchy or the actual object. I like dragging from the view hierarchy because that ensures you're selecting the right object. So Control, drag it, and oh, look, it's not letting me drop it in there. Now, full disclosure, I didn't do this on purpose, but it's a great illustration of a step that I missed. We need to go to our cell here. So click in the view hierarchy, the TableView cell. And if you got rid of the utilities pane here on the right, pull it back up. We need to, just like we did with the view controller, we need to attach our cell to the file. So again, click the identity inspector, the little ID card thing, but you have to make sure you have your TableView cell selected. Then click on the identity inspector, and then the video cell file you just created, so video cell, there you go. So now they're connected. So now that I've set my class on my cell, I should be able to go back and make sure you select the image view down here in the view hierarchy, Control drag into the video cell, and now look, I can drop in the outlet. So do that. It is an outlet, and we're just going to call this video image view. Go ahead and hit connect. So this is just giving us an outlet, which gives us access to this image view. Do the same thing with the label. Drag it here, and let me get rid of this side panel. No, not yet. So we'll just call this video title label. Hit connect. And now let me get rid of this panel so we have more room. Then I'm also going to get rid of the assistant editor. Click this X up here in the upper right, and then click on your video cell. This is the struggles of working on just a laptop screen. That's why I always recommend getting an external monitor so you have more room. Not to mention my fonts are huge for the video so you guys can actually read it, so things look pretty cramped. So, okay, anyway, now we're in our video cell, and we have the outlet from our video image view here on line 13 and our outlet for the video title label. So for now, our video cell is set. We're going to revisit this in a little bit. So to recap, we've created the UI for our table view. We've created the UI for our custom UITableView cell. We've also built the file for our cell, which we're going to add some code to later. So the other main thing that we need for the table view that we haven't done yet is we need to create our data. So to do that, we're going to create our video object. Now, as you saw in the intro, the table view is just going to have a thumbnail image of the video and then the video title. So let's create our video object that has those two properties. So again, back up here in beginner table view folder, do Command N. For this one, let's just do a Swift file. So hit next, just call it video, create, and then again, I drag it up here. Okay, so creating our video object class, it's just going to be class video. And it's going to have properties of an image, which is a UI image, and then also a title, which is going to be a string. Now we need to initialize our class here, so go ahead and do our init method, and it's going to be image is UI image, and then title is going to be a string. And then here, let's go ahead and set that. So self.image equals image, and self.title equals title. So again, the video object just has an image, a title, and then here in 16 to 18, we're initializing it. Where this initializer function will come into play here in a little bit when we create our video array, which you'll see here soon. Okay, don't forget to import UIKit here because we are using UI image. And that should silence the errors from Xcode and make us good to go. Now let's start putting all these pieces together. Go to your video list screen, which is again the main screen that we were working on. Go and get rid of this boilerplate code on lines 19 to 33. And you can get rid of this comment here on line 16. And that's fine too. So like I said, we need to create our array for our data. So the first thing we need to do is create that array. So let's do var videos. And that is an array of video. And that is going to equal an empty array. So what we did here on line 13 is we created a var called videos. It is an array of type video, and equals this empty bracket here is just initializing an empty array because we're going to add stuff to it. So let's create that function here. So let's do func create array. And that is going to return an array of video. So what this function is going to do is it's going to create all the video objects, throw them into kind of a temporary array, and because it returns an array of videos, we're going to return that temporary array, and then up here in ViewDidLoad, we're going to set our videos variable equal to that videos array that got returned in this function. Might sound a little confusing right now, but as I walk through it, hopefully it'll clear up. Okay, before we write this function, I'm going to bring in the images for my thumbnails. Now I am including a Dropbox links in the description so you can download these images as well. But we need to bring them in now because we're going to need them to write this function. So go to my Finder here. Here I have them. Make sure you have your assets up here. This is what holds kind of all your images. So back to my Finder. I have these 6 images here that you'll have too. Just go ahead and drag them into here. Should be good to go. See all 6 of them. Those are my thumbnails. Go back to your video list screen, and now we can start typing this function. Now, this function does require a lot of typing, so I'm going to fast forward through it, and then I'll walk you through it step by step. All right, here we go. All right, now that I got this all typed out, let me go ahead and walk you through it. So again, what this function is doing here is it is creating our data and then returning it into an array. So the array that's being returned is called temp videos, and it's an array of video, just like our videos array up here in 13, because that's what we're going to set. We're going to set videos equal to this temp videos here. So now that we have our empty array, we need to create all 6 video objects. So video 1 is we're initializing our video object here. The image, now this is new in Swift 3. You may see this written also as UI image and then parentheses named, and then you have a string of the name of the file. If you start typing the name of the file, in Swift 3, these are called image literals. It will give you a little thumbnail of the image and then just the name of the file here. You can use them, you cannot use them, it's up to you, but I'm using them here. So my images are all set and my titles are all set here too. So I initialized 6 videos with images and titles, and then here in line 31 through 37, I'm appending this temporary videos array with each video. So you see it's temp videos.append video 1, video 2, video 3, 4, 5, 6. So now this temp videos array that I'm returning is all 6 of these videos. So now that this helper function creates our array, let's go ahead and call that in ViewDidLoad. So let's just do videos, which is again our variable up here on line 13 that we created, just equals create array. So again, we're setting videos equals to this temp videos array that gets returned down here on line 40. So that takes care of our data. Now let's actually build our table view. Now there's a little more setup we have to do with our table view. When you create a table view, you need to conform to the UITableViewDelegate and UITableView data source. We're going to go ahead and do that down here in an extension. So call it extension, and then this is on the video list screen, or whatever you named your screen, and it is going to conform to just typing UITableView, and then you should see data source, and then comma UITableView, and then you should see delegate as well. Now Xcode should yell at me here in a second saying that I'm not conforming to the protocol. If you click on this red thing, it says video list screen does not conform to protocol UITableView, data source, and delegate. So what you need for every table view is number of rows and sections and self row at index path. Be very familiar with those 2 function names. You're going to use them hundreds of times. There are plenty more UITableViewDelegate methods, but these are the 2 that you're going to use the most. So let's go ahead and type those in. So just start typing number, and then it should start come up. You want to go down to number of rows in section. So basically this is determining how many rows should the table view actually show. In our case, we want it to be the number of videos we have. So we want to return videos.count. So in our case, the number of cells that are going to show up is 6 because we have 6 videos. That's what we want. And the other one is self row at index path. So just type cell, and then you should get it here, number 1. Yep, so self row at index path. Now this name I know sounds weird. I mean, it rolls off the tongue for me because I've use it all the time. But this is where you're actually configuring each and every cell. So again, we're going to have 6 cells. This function is going to get called every time a new cell appears, and it's going to display the proper data in that specific cell. And what an index path is basically what row your video is. So up here, for example, video 2 is going to be index path 1. I know that's kind of confusing, but if you remember, arrays are 0 index. So an array of 10 objects is index 0 to 9, not 1 to 10. So that's why video 2 is index path 1, because video 1 is index path 0. So a little confusing, but just keep that in mind. So anyway, so that's what index path does. So let's start configuring this cell. So the first thing we want to do is get the proper video. So let's go ahead and create a variable. So let video equal videos. And then the way to access an item in an array is these 2 close brackets. It's called subscripting. So for example, videos 0 is going to be the first item in that array. So in our case, that's going to be video 1. However, we want this to be dynamic. So we want whatever object is at index path dot row. So again, what index path dot row is whatever video is at that row. Because this function here, self row and index path, gets called every time a new cell appears, we want to make sure we're grabbing the right video. So that's what we're doing here. So now we need to create our cell variable so we can configure it here in the code. So let cell equal TableView, and this is the TableView that gets passed into here, so the one that's attached to the delegate method. So TableView.dequeue, D-E-Q-U, and we want dequeue reusable cell with identifier. In that identifier, which we actually haven't set yet, to be honest with you, I forgot. We need to go back and do it. So we're going to call ours video cell. And we need to cast that as a video cell. So what I forgot to do was, if you go back to our storyboard, main.storyboard, click on your cell here in the view hierarchy, or your video cell. Make sure you pull out your inspector tab. And if you click on the inspector here, the little down arrow, you'll notice identifier, this reuse identifier. You have to set that for each custom cell. I forgot to do that, and it's just a string. So again, we called ours video cell. Now in a typical project, you may have a bunch of custom TableView cells. So this is a way to distinguish between them. So make sure you hit enter to set that, and then go back to your video list screen. And then now we're good here. And again, anytime you have to set something with a string, it's a good idea to set it as a variable. We're not going to do that right now, but just be very careful for typos when you're using strings here. OK, so we have our cell here. Now, you'll see a lot of times in maybe other tutorials or maybe other Stack Overflow code, you'll see people just do like cell.video, imageview.image. You'll see them start configuring the cell just right here in self-row index path. I personally don't like doing that. I like having all my cell configuration logic in the cell because it makes sense. If you want to see how the cell's set up, you go to that cell file. Makes your code easier to reason about. So let's go ahead and write that function in our video cell. So down here below our outlets, just go ahead and create a simple function. So it's just called func set video, because that's what we're doing. We're setting the video. And in order to do that, we need to get a video passed in, which we're going to do from our self-row index path. So it's going to take in a video of type video. I know it's a lot of videos here. And all we're doing here is video image view dot image equals the whatever image is attached to that video object that we passed in here on line 16. So it's going to be video dot image. Simple enough. And same thing with the title. So video title label dot text is going to be equal to video dot title. And again, just to reiterate, this video object that we're getting here is what we're passing in self-row index path, which we're going to go do right now. So go back to your video list screen. So now instead of setting all those properties here in our self-row index path, we just call cell.setVideo. You should get the autocomplete. If you don't get the autocomplete, just do a Command-Shift-K to do a clean. You should get it after that. Hit enter, and the video we want to pass in is, again, what we set here on line 50. Remember, we grabbed the proper video from the row. So video. And then finally, we just return cell. Because you see here this function, you see this arrow means it returns something and is returning a UITableView cell, so that's what we're returning. So just to recap, here on line 43, we made our video list screen conform to the proper delegates. We wrote the two functions that were required to conform to that delegate. Now we need to set the TableViewDelegate to this screen. So the only way these delegate methods fire off is if the table view is connected to the screen by the delegate. So there's two ways to do that. First, we need an outlet to our table view. So again, just to make some room here, get rid of this panel, open up our main.storyboard, hold Option, click on video list screen to get that over there. Here in your view hierarchy, click on table view. So control drag on your table view, go ahead and drop it in. Just call it table view, hit connect. Okay, this feels super cramped, so let's get rid of the assistant editor. Go back to our video list screen, clean this up a little bit. I always like to put my outlets at the top, so you can just go ahead and cut and paste there, and it's good to go. So now there's two ways to set your delegate. You can do it in code or you can do it in storyboard. The way to do it in code is you would just do TableView.delegate equals self, and TableView.data source equals self. So what this is doing is this is setting this view controller as the delegate and data source of your table view, and you have to do that in order for these delegate methods to fire off accordingly. So that's how you do it in code. Let me show you how to do it in storyboard. Now there's a whole storyboard versus code debate, which is better. I'll leave that up to you, but let's still go ahead and delete this now and go back to our storyboard. And it's real simple. Just make sure you have your table view clicked, and then control drag it to the yellow dot, and hit data source, and then control drag to the yellow dot again, and then hit delegate. That basically just replicates what we did in code that I just deleted. It sets this view as the delegate and data source of the table view. Now we kind of saved this step for last. I usually do this step as soon as I create my table view so I don't forget it, but I wanted to kind of explain everything first before we went back to this. Okay, back in our video list screen, let's kind of walk through what we did because I think we're pretty much done. So again, the table view needs data, so that's what our videos array is here. We're creating that array by creating all the video objects here. And then in our table view methods, the number of rows in section is the number of videos we have. That's why it's returning videos.count. And then here it's self-row at index path. If you remember, self-row at index path is configuring each and every cell as it appears. So this gets fired off all the time as you're scrolling, as it newly appears. Anytime a new cell comes on the screen, this gets called. So what we're doing is we're grabbing the video at the index path to make sure we have the right video. And then we're making sure we get a video cell, so it's our custom cell. And then we're just configuring that cell based on the video that we passed. And if you remember, the set video function here in our video cell is just setting the image and setting the title. And we put this in here so we can encapsulate all of our cell configuration code in the video cell file. That way it's not cluttering up your self-row at index path and making this view controller huge. So, all right, I think that should about do it. Let's go ahead and run it to test it out. You see we have our thumbnail images and the titles that we set, and it's in the table view, and you can scroll it up and down. All right, so there's a table view using some basic UITableView cells. Now this was just to set the foundation for your UITableView skills. They can get pretty elaborate, whether it's dynamically adjusting the height of the cell based on the content or having a bunch of different cell types to conditionally choose from, and on and on and on. So consider this video your very first step in mastering the UITableView. There's a lot more to learn. All right, if you found this at all useful, go ahead and hit subscribe. I put out new videos all the time.